Welcome to our Histories and Native Tales channel, where truth outshines the wildest fiction. Today, we uncover the extraordinary tale of a man who shaped the myths of the Wild West, yet lived a life more dangerous than his fictional heroes. Don't forget to subscribe as we dive into the incredible saga of Ned Buntline, writer, adventurer, and outlaw. Hit that notification bell to join us on this wild ride through 19th century America. Like, share, and let's discover together how one man's real-life adventures would put his dime novels to shame. Author Zane Carroll Judson, who carved his place in American literary history under the evocative pen name Ned Buntline, emerged as a figure whose life rivaled the very tales he penned. His reputation rested on three distinct pillars: his prolific output of dime novels that captured the public's imagination, his numerous and often dramatic encounters with law enforcement, and his signature weapon, a distinctive long-barreled Colt .45 that would later become integral to his legacy. The path to his notoriety began remarkably early, when at the tender age of 12, he made the bold decision to flee his childhood home, securing a position as a cabin boy aboard a freighter bound for the Caribbean waters. This early maritime adventure would prove merely the prelude to an even more remarkable turn of events. By the age of 15, displaying a maturity beyond his years, Buntline had secured a position as a midshipman under the command of General Zachary Taylor, a future president of the United States. In this capacity, he found himself thrust into the heart of the Seminole War in Florida, an experience that would later influence his writings and shape his understanding of frontier conflict. His literary career took root in these formative experiences at sea as he began crafting short works that drew from his maritime adventures. These early writing attempts met with sufficient success to encourage his continued literary pursuits. However, Buntline's life took a darker turn in 1845 when he demonstrated his physical prowess and daring by single-handedly apprehending two murder suspects in Eddyville, Kentucky, and feat that earned him a substantial bounty of $600. This success was followed by an even more dramatic incident in March of the following year in Nashville, when a duel culminated in him fatally shooting Robert Porterfield, a man whose wife had numbered among Buntline's youthful admirers, adding another layer of complexity to his already controversial reputation. Following his arrest, Buntline's courtroom defense unfolded as dramatically as any scene from his future novels. In a futile attempt to maintain his innocence, he offered a peculiarly worded protest that would later prove damning. "No proof has ever been advanced that I ever touched her hand," he declared, though witnesses would subsequently testify to far more intimate encounters. This careful choice of words, focusing specifically on hand-touching while avoiding mention of other interactions, would come to highlight the calculated nature of his defense. The already tense proceedings erupted into chaos when Porterfield's vengeful brother and a group of his loyal friends, their patience finally snapping, drew their weapons in the middle of the trial. The crack of gunfire shattered the courtroom's decorum as multiple shots were fired at Buntline, who sat seemingly trapped at the defense table. However, displaying the quick thinking and agility that would become legendary, Ned sprang into action. In a feat that witnesses would recount for years to come, he leaped to his feet, his body weaving and ducking through the hail of bullets, before making a desperate dash across the crowded courtroom and hurling himself through an open window. His escape, however, was far from complete. Upon reaching the street, Buntline made a frantic sprint toward the perceived sanctuary of the Old City Hotel. Fate, though, had other plans. A passerby, drawn by the commotion and acting on impulse, seized a rock and hurled it with devastating accuracy, striking Buntline in the head. Despite this injury, Buntline's survival instincts drove him forward toward the hotel's entrance. Then, in a moment that seemed to freeze time, a single gunshot pierced the air, and Buntline was struck again, this time taking a bullet to the chest. Yet even with these mounting injuries, his desperate bid for freedom continued. Despite his grievous wounds, Buntline's desperate flight continued as he staggered up the hotel stairs, his footsteps echoing through the stairwell, while a mixed group of armed civilians and lawmen thundered in pursuit. The chase reached its climax on the rooftop, where Buntline found himself cornered, faced with an impossible choice: surrender or attempt a death-defying leap to the adjacent building. With the determination of a man who valued freedom over life itself, he backed up several paces, then launched himself across the yawning gap between buildings. For one heart-stopping moment, it seemed he might succeed. His body cleared the distance, and his hands managed to grasp the edge of the neighboring building's facade. But fate had one final cruel twist in store. As his bloodied fingers struggled to maintain their tenuous grip on the building's edge, his strength, already depleted by his injuries and desperate escape, finally failed him. Buntline's grasp slipped, and he plummeted 50 feet to the unforgiving ground below, his fall witnessed by a growing crowd of horrified onlookers. The impact was catastrophic. The injuries he sustained in that fall would leave an indelible mark on his body, resulting in a permanent disability that would affect him for the remainder of his days. Law enforcement officers, finally catching up to their quarry, found him broken but remarkably alive. They transported the gravely wounded man to jail, where they made arrangements for medical attention to address his numerous injuries. However, Buntline's ordeal was far from over. Under the cover of darkness, a vengeful mob, their bloodlust unsatisfied by his injuries, stormed the jail. They dragged his battered body outside and attempted to exact their own brutal form of justice, trying to lynch him from a nearby awning. It was only through the timely intervention of the same lawman who had pursued him that Buntline was saved from strangulation, the rope being cut before it could complete its grim task. Following his recovery from this series of near-fatal encounters, Buntline once again found himself facing trial for Porterfield's killing. In a surprising turn of events that defied the expectations of many, Buntline's second trial concluded with a verdict of not guilty, and he was released from custody. This brush with death seemed to reinvigorate his literary pursuits, as he went on to produce an astounding collection of over 400 short stories. His connection to the American West's most legendary lawmen would later spawn one of the most persistent myths in frontier history, centered around what became known as the Buntline Special. According to a prominent Western author's account, Buntline allegedly presented 5 custom-made revolvers to members of the Dodge City Peace Commission as a gesture of gratitude for the wealth of material they had provided for his dime novels. These prestigious recipients were said to include some of the most renowned figures of the Old West: the legendary Wyatt Earp, the infamous Bat Masterson, the formidable Bill Tillman, the steadfast Charlie Bassett, and the determined Neil Brown. These weapons were purportedly extraordinary in their specifications. .45 Colt revolvers featuring distinctive 12-inch barrels, equipped with removable shoulder stocks and standard sights. Each was said to bear wooden grips personally carved with Buntline's first name, Ned, making them unique pieces of frontier history. However, historical investigation has cast significant doubt on this captivating tale. Despite extensive research, no trace of these legendary firearms has ever been discovered in Colt's meticulous historical records, and no contemporary documentation of their existence has been found outside of the Western author's singular literary account. Through meticulous historical research and documentation, scholars have definitively established that the legendary gifted Buntline specials were, in fact, nothing more than an elaborate fiction born from the creative mind of their chronicler. Yet in a fascinating twist of historical irony, this fictional creation would go on to inspire very real manufacturing decisions. The Colt Manufacturing Company, recognizing the marketing potential of this mythical firearm, began producing their own version of the Buntline Special, which has remained in production through various iterations into modern times, transforming a literary invention into a tangible piece of American firearms history. As Buntline's own life story continued to unfold, his penchant for dramatic embellishment seemed to extend beyond his fictional works. In his later years, he began weaving an increasingly elaborate tapestry of military accomplishments, presenting himself as a distinguished veteran of the Indian Wars. His claims grew increasingly grandiose. He asserted that he had served as chief of scouts with the prestigious rank of colonel, and regaled listeners with tales of surviving an incredible 20 battle wounds. These claims, like his famous revolvers, would later be revealed as products of his fertile imagination. Perhaps most significantly, Buntline's literary works had an unexpected impact on American society that extended far beyond mere entertainment. Much like modern concerns about the influence of gangster films on youth culture, Buntline's dime novels inadvertently created a romantic allure around the lives of Western outlaws. His vivid descriptions and dramatic narratives transformed these frontier criminals into compelling anti-heroes, inadvertently glorifying their illegal activities. For some readers, particularly impressionable young minds, these stories served not as cautionary tales, but as inspiration, casting a seductive glow over the lawless frontier lifestyle they depicted. One of the most compelling examples of Buntline's unintended influence manifested in the notorious case of Jenny Stevenson and Anna Emmeline McDougal, who would become infamous under their outlaw monikers Little Britches and Cattle Annie. These young women, thoroughly immersed in the romantic outlaw narratives of Buntline's dime novels, allegedly found themselves drawn into the orbit of the notorious Doolin gang. Historical evidence suggests that their transformation from readers to outlaws may have been directly inspired by the glamorized criminal exploits they encountered in these popular works of fiction. The narrative then shifts dramatically to a first-hand account of one of the most significant battles in Native American history, presented through the eyes of one bull, both nephew and adopted son to the legendary Sitting Bull. One Bull's testimony provides an intimate glimpse into the moments leading up to the Battle of Little Bighorn, his words carrying the weight of direct historical witness. Speaking from personal experience, One Bull recounts his role as one of Sitting Bull's designated protectors at the age of 23, sharing these crucial responsibilities with another Hunkpapa warrior named Gray Eagle. Their sacred duty was to ensure the safety of their revered leader, a responsibility that would soon be tested in the crucible of battle. One Bull's account captures the ordinary moments that preceded the extraordinary conflict. His morning began with routine tasks, leading the family's horses to water, a daily ritual that reflected the peaceful rhythm of camp life. As midday approached, he returned to the pony herd for their customary noon watering, unaware of the historic events about to unfold. The tranquility was shattered by the sudden sound of gunfire emanating from the Hunkpapa camp circle. With quick thinking born of warrior training, One Bull swiftly captured a single pony while releasing the others, confident in their natural instinct to return to the safety of the camp. His senses heightened by imminent danger, he detected the ominous signs of approaching conflict, the rising dust clouds, and the distinctive sound of horseshoes striking against rocky ground. With urgency, he made his way back to the teepee he shared with his uncle, Sitting Bull, as the peace of that summer day transformed into the opening moments of a legendary battle. Upon One Bull's return, the Hunkpapa camp had descended into absolute chaos, transforming from a peaceful settlement into a scene of frenzied activity as the reality of imminent battle took hold. Warriors darted between teepees, desperately attempting to secure their war ponies, while the air filled with a cacophony of sounds, the urgent screams of women, the frightened cries of children, and the booming voices of elderly men shouting strategic advice and ancient wisdom to the younger warriors preparing for combat. The gravity of the situation became even more apparent as women and children began a hasty evacuation toward the western perimeter. Such was the urgency of their flight that they abandoned their traditional protocols of carefully dismantling teepees and gathering essential belongings, a clear indication that the threat was both immediate and severe. Amidst this chaos, One Bull managed to reach his shared teepee ahead of Sitting Bull, where he instinctively retrieved his trusted muzzle-loader rifle and began a rapid inspection of the weapon. The pivotal moment came with Sitting Bull's dramatic entrance into the teepee. In a sequence of actions that would prove historically significant, the revered leader took control of the situation, demonstrating both his authority and strategic thinking. He deliberately removed the rifle from One Bull's hands, replacing it with a more traditional stone-headed war club. In a gesture heavy with symbolic and practical significance, he then removed his personal rawhide shield from its buckskin case and carefully placed it over his nephew's shoulders. His subsequent words carried the weight of both command and trust. One bull was to serve as his uncle's representative in the face of the approaching military threat. Sitting Bull's instructions revealed his measured approach to the crisis, even in these tense moments. He directed one bull to attempt peaceful negotiation if possible, demonstrating a willingness to pursue diplomatic solutions despite the imminent threat of violence. The order to parley with them if you can, and convey Sitting Bull's willingness to engage in peace talks showed remarkable restraint and wisdom in the face of aggression. However, these hopes for peaceful resolution were quickly shattered as events rapidly escalated into violent confrontation. As Lone Bull and his fellow warriors rode out to meet the approaching soldiers, they were immediately met with hostile fire, eliminating any possibility of peaceful negotiation. The situation quickly devolved into intense combat, with the soldiers retreating toward the river, perhaps seeking better defensive positions or attempting to regroup. What followed was a brutal sequence of close-quarter combat along the riverbank and in the water itself. One bull's account provides chilling details of the intimate nature of the fighting, describing personal combat with multiple soldiers. His narrative shares the raw, unvarnished reality of battle, including his use of the war club and the grim determination required to hold an enemy combatant underwater until death. These vivid details serve as a powerful reminder of the personal nature of warfare in this era, where combat often involved direct, face-to-face encounters. This sequence of events marked the opening phase of what would become known as the Battle of Little Bighorn, a conflict that would soon establish itself as one of the most significant engagements between Native American forces and the United States military. One bull's extraordinary life extended well beyond the famous battle, spanning decades until his peaceful passing as an elderly man in 1947. His survival and longevity served as a living testament to this pivotal moment in American history. The narrative then transitions dramatically to another frontier account, documented by Corporal Pike of the 4th Ohio Cavalry, revealing a haunting discovery in the wilderness. The soldiers' journey led them from Hardwood Creek to the Mesquite, a tributary feeding into the South Canadian River. The location's significance lay in its perceived safety from indigenous attacks, as the tracking signs they encountered were sparse and weathered by time. Their chosen campsite possessed a natural beauty and strategic value, an expansive grove of young cottonwood trees adjacent to an imposing 30-foot bluff, whose protruding cliff face had eroded to create a cave-like formation. However, this seemingly idyllic setting harbored a grim secret that spoke to the harsh realities of frontier life. At the cave's base lay the grisly evidence of a deadly encounter, the intermingled remains of a man and an enormous bear, presumed to be a grizzly based on the skeletal dimensions. The human remains told a violent story, crushed arms and shattered ribs, indicating the ferocity of the final struggle. Nearby, the artifacts of the hunter's last stand were scattered, the weathered components of a rifle, its stock splintered and broken, and a distinctive large Bowie knife of the style known as the Arkansas toothpick. Through careful examination of the scene, Corporal Pike and his companions pieced together the likely sequence of events that led to this tragic outcome. The hunter, standing on the ground below, had apparently fired upon the bear positioned on the cliff above. Despite sustaining what would prove to be fatal wounds, the massive beast had managed to leap down upon its attacker. What followed was undoubtedly a desperate hand-to-hand struggle between man and beast, culminating in the death of both combatants. The passage of time had obscured many details of this frontier drama. The weathering of the remains and artifacts suggested years had elapsed since the fatal encounter. The anonymous nature of the discovery added to its poignancy. No identifying marks were found on either the weapon or the knife, leaving the hunter's identity a mystery. The only definitive detail came from the surgeon's examination of the skeletal remains, which confirmed the victim had been a white man. This lonely grave in the wilderness served as a stark reminder of the dangers faced by those who ventured into the untamed frontier, where the line between hunter and hunted could blur in an instant. And so ends our tale of two remarkable stories, Ned Buntline's wild adventures that shaped the American West, and a nameless hunter's final stand against nature's fury. But countless more untold stories lie hidden in history's shadows, waiting to be discovered. What other forgotten heroes and mysterious encounters remain buried in time? Join us next time as we uncover more extraordinary tales from America's frontier past. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to journey with us through history's most fascinating mysteries. Until then, remember, sometimes truth truly is stranger than fiction.